So welcome, Jan.
Thank you,
It's always a
Irene.
pleasure to sit and have a conversation with you. I was laughing with you in the green room before this because I said that I every time I listen to your books on Audible, I feel like I'm having a personal conversation with you, and I find myself speaking out loud. Yeah, that's right. That's what we need to talk about.
Right.
And so that's why I felt it was imperative that I interview you today, and why I traveled all the way here to make this happen.
Well, thank you.
And so let's dive right into it. I especially love that you and I are both on a mission to create a paradigm shift.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
let's dive right into
Yeah.
your specialty, trauma and addiction. And can you please redefine those for us?
Well, the way that we do that in the polyvagal world, so polyvagal theory and Steve Porges is really raging these days in terms of a paradigm shift, which is wonderful for us to see, is instead of understanding trauma and addiction, for example, or many other things in terms of pathology, in a top-down kind of cognitive way, we want people to shift into understanding things through the lens of the autonomic nervous system, because this is where we're really able to translate these behaviors that often we see as being strange, like dissociating and numbing and doing things that harm yourself, and drinking a lot and getting into lots of unsafe sex. And why would people do those things? Why would they cut their bodies? Why? And nobody wants to talk about it. And yet we don't really understand it, and we're not doing a good job on treating it. So when we shift into understanding these behaviors through the nervous system, it changes everything, because it helps you to start to see that these behaviors actually shift us in autonomic states from that, that flight fight state that everybody knows that place in the body. So that's that sympathetic branch of the nervous system where we're mobilizing to try to get away or to fight back, right, with threat. And then if we can't do that, we end up shutting down. And that's the branch of the vagus nerve that Steve Porges named as that dorsal branch, which is where we dissociate and shut down. And so the way we see a lot of these trauma and addiction responses is they're what we call state regulation strategies. They help us to shift from anxiety and flight fight, drink a bottle of wine, and shut down into a numbing, dissociated, and then going to sleep state, which brings relief in a body that doesn't feel safe in the world. So safety is the bedrock, right? Safety determines how we live our lives. Whether we're living our lives in flight fight, where we're defending against threat, even when it might not be there because we're activated, right? Or we're shutting down and we're missing all the good things in life because we have to numb out because it's too overwhelming or it's too painful, or we're sitting on complex developmental trauma that we grew up in. And so when we understand these behaviors as ways of adapting, shifting back and forth to try to survive, then we see a totally different picture. It's not that this person's doing something wrong or bad. It's that this person is doing something that the body is designed to do in order to survive. And that's a paradigm shift. That's radical.
It is. It takes it from, and I love what you say because it's exactly what I say. You're not bad, stupid, lazy, lacking willpower, right? You're not a bad person. You're not a failure. And you're not sick. Right? Can you speak more on that?
Yeah, because I think one of the things that's so important to get is that bodies, we will respond when we feel unsafe. That's how we survive, right? But we can't stay in that flight, fight state forever. It's too metabolically challenging to the body, right? So bodies are biologically designed to then shift into conserving and shutting down, so that in that dorsal dissociated state, we're actually kind of like hibernating. And so we can't stay there either, because the heart rate slows down so much, we could die there too. Mm-hmm. So if we're feeling unsafe, and then the body shifts into flight, fight, and then we can't stay there forever, so we got to go and shut down to relieve ourselves, what is it that we're doing to shift those states? Mm-hmm. That's a very important thing to track with people, right? So you come home, you're really flipped out because your boss yelled at you. You're feeling a lot of anxiety, your heart rate's up. You drink a bottle of wine. It works. It brings the heart rate way down, and you numb out and go to sleep. It brings relief to the body. It's not that and especially if you think about it in terms of self-harm and cutting the body. This is how I got to understanding this all. In the very beginning of my career, I worked with a group of young women who were incest survivors. And they were all cutting their bodies, or tugging and scratching and biting, and that was all being discussed in the medical world as borderline personality disorder. Yucky, ugh, you go deal with them, Jan. We don't want to work with them. It was seen as manipulative behavior, as masochistic behavior, but I didn't buy it. I didn't buy it a lot because I thought, whatever way of understanding this is producing this kind of response in the system of people having, frankly, contempt for these women. There's something wrong here. So I went looking to try to figure it out. And I found a wonderful feminist community of women who were also trying to figure it out. And I found Judith Herman, who wrote Trauma and Recovery, which is an iconic book. I mean, you have to read Judith Herman to understand trauma, right?
Trauma and recovery.
Yes. Yeah. And so she was a medical doctor. She was a psychiatrist. So she trained in medicine. So I think she understood something about the nervous system that we didn't talk about. We talked about flooding, flight, fight. We talked about numbing, dissociating, and shutting down. But she started talking about it in terms of the nervous system. And that what people were doing in engaging in these self-harming behaviors was creating jolts to the nervous system, which shift states. Because when you self-harm, often the body would then release these endogenous opioids, and you would get relief. Yeah. And so when I read that, and I listened to what these beautiful women were telling me, because they knew that these crazy things brought relief. They didn't know how, but they knew it because when we tracked the behavior, and I think this is what we have to try to do with our people, is help them understand themselves without having some loaded preconceived ideas. Just listening, So what would happen when you would harm yourself like that? What did you feel? And some people would freak out. They would be numb, and they would freak out, and they would shift back up into flight, fight, which woke the body up again. And for other people, they would numb at the sight of the blood, and it would shut them back down again. So these really powerful ways that bodies have of keeping us alive. And if we just see it from that pathologizing model, we don't understand any of that. So these are the ways in which bodies are adaptive.
Yeah.
They'll do what it takes, right?
Absolutely. To use another, like a medical analogy, having had hypoglycemia, low blood sugar, for decades. In fact, that's what caused me to lose consciousness and crash and burn 20 years ago. I have come to realize from using even CGMs, continuous glucose monitors, for instance, like when I'm sleeping, and when my blood sugar drops, my brain will create a nightmare. Why? Because it snaps, like it skyrockets my adrenaline, right? Which then boosts my blood sugar.
Right.
Right?
Oh,
So
it's
it's
interesting, yeah.
Exactly. Right? Because I could never understand where, like, all of a sudden I'd be like having this beautiful dream, and then all of a sudden, like, wham, it's like you wake up with a jolt. And when I started wearing the CGM, I realized that, oh, this nightmare is actually helping me.
That's very cool.
Right? So in a sense,
It's the same idea,
Yeah.
the same phenomenon.
Right.
Yeah. And I think it's just so important for people to understand this. Because otherwise we feel like we're doing something wrong and bad. And that's how our culture understands it too, right? We're bad, so then, if people are stuck in terrible addiction modes, and then we send them to jail. Or we're sick, and so we send them into psychiatric institutions where they receive essentially like so little actual
It's very true, unfortunately.
healing, and often are just re-traumatized by being with other folks in a time when they're terrified inside themselves, and there's no real work at creating safety in these institutions. And that's really what we have to do, is to come back to basics. How do we help people to feel safe enough in their bodies so that they don't spend so much time in what I call this trauma feedback loop between sympathetic flight fight, whatever it is you're helping yourself to do to shift states, and then shutting down into a numb dorsal state, and then back and forth, right? That trauma feedback loop fed by neuroplasticity, and then you're in a big rut. And how do you get out of that rut?
It can feel impossible.
Yeah.
The impossible dream, yes.
Especially when the way you're being helped is all top-down cognitive stuff. So that led me to looking for body-based therapies, ways of being able to tap into that process of interoception, right? Helping people, because I could see in that trauma feedback loop, people had left their bodies because it was too painful to track and feel into what's going on inside.
Please define interoception for our listeners.
Yeah. So interoception is like another sense that we have in being able to just notice, slowing down. You got to be able to slow down and notice what you're feeling and sensing in your body. Like right now, I can feel, a little bit of elevation in my heart rate because we're filming something, right? We're not just sitting on my porch.
We'll do that after.
Yeah. And I feel a bit of a sensation in my throat. And I can feel the lights, and I feel excitement. So interoception often is thought of as just sensation. But interoception is much more than that. It's my lived experience. It's how am I experiencing this moment right now. So we're going deeper down into kind of like intuition.
Yes.
That murky kind of edge that Jean Gendlin would talk about, my teacher of interoception and felt sensing. And that's the place where we become integrated between mind and body.
I love it. It's reminds me of, what's her name, Edith Erickson's wife. Had this really quick, simple, powerful mindfulness exercise that uses interoception. It's just I call it the 3 things exercise. What are 3 things I see? What are 3 things I hear?
Right.
What am I? 3 things I'm tasting, smelling, So working through all the external, it could be, what am I feeling? Like, I'm holding this book. Yes, I feel the warmth from the lights. What am I seeing? Yes, the brightness of the lights. I'm seeing you. I'm seeing your beautiful mantelpiece as behind you. Then it's also, what am I feeling inside? Physically, and then emotionally, what are my thoughts? Right? So you can work through all of that. It's another form.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like a nice beginning to slowing things down and pausing. In focusing, what I love about there's so much I love about Jenlyn's work, but what I think is really important to emphasize to people, because in this kind of top-down, cognitive-based world, we always are looking for skills and tools. And that's great, but what we also want to be looking for are processes in the body. Like in polyvagal theory, we talk a lot about the process of neuroception, another sensing, right? This is how the body senses how safe I feel right now. And it's unconscious. It's like with temperature, right? We don't think, I better raise my temperature because I'm getting a cold. It's unconscious, right? It comes from the brainstem. So this is the same kind of this idea of like, what's happening in me now, and how connected am I to myself? And Jenlyn, he studied this to try to figure out, how do we help our people, and how does change happen? And what he discovered is that change happens in the body. It's not just up here. It's up here, but it's how our cognition is then integrated down into how our body carries how safe we feel, how able we are to learn how to manage our nervous system a little bit more, to help ourselves feel safer when we don't feel safe by giving, say, cues of safety, like I can look at you and I can smile. And that helps you to feel safe with me, right? And we can give that to people in the world. It's amazing, really. And same way with interoception, what Jenlyn discovered is that people that do well in life, they reported this through psychotherapy, are people who are really connected down inside. It makes sense. They're integrated. They're living in their bodies. They connect with themselves deeply. And they can feel this process that happens in the body where we call it a felt shift. It's another shift, right?
Gotta love the shift.
Yeah. And this happens when, say, I'm feeling kind of anxious, a lot of flight-fight energy, and you come through the door and I think, there's Irene, right? And so I've got this thing that's bugging me. I feel safe with you. I can sit down with you and tell you deeper down in that interoceptive place of this thing that's going on that's bothering me. And I can feel it then in my body, a thickening or a tightening, constriction in flight-fight, right? And if you co-regulate with me, if your nervous system helps mine to feel safe and really heard, this is the magic of therapy. And the magic of body wisdom is that then my body starts to open and relax. And sometimes we might say, I had a great conversation with my girlfriend. I had a good cry and I felt so much better. And nothing about the problem changed. But we know that place where we just feel better. And that feel better is what we call the felt shift in the body. And so I had that from Jenlyn, and then when I met Steve Porges, I started thinking, like, this shift in autonomic state is that thing we call the felt shift. And that's how I crossed interoception of that release in the body is a release from sympathetic tension or dorsal collapse into nice, grounded ventral vagal energy. The vagus nerve comes online, you feel better, you feel more expansive and safer in the world to take up space. And the really interesting thing is that nothing about the problem has actually changed yet. but how we feel and think about it has changed because we've shifted autonomic state. So in a sympathetic state, I'm thinking the world's an unsafe place. Why is Irene looking at me like that? And the guy over there is staring at me. And like, don't bump into me on the sidewalk. But in a grounded, ventral state, I think, oh, there's Irene. She's my friend. And she's smiling at me. And that fellow over there is doing his thing. And somebody bumped into me. But, you know, that happens in life. And so we have totally different experience of the world when we feel safe.
Yeah. I want to back up just a little bit and unpack the top-down approach compared to what you are discovering or have discovered, and let's take it a step further and say we have been programmed to abdicate our most powerful allies, our senses, our internal senses, our around. Like, we're taught to, you know, it's all about logic and what we can see. I need to see it to believe it. I remember the morning of the infamous car accident in my life, where I was driving north 3 hours to visit a friend for Mother's Day weekend, and I had this deep sense of foreboding.
Wow.
And I actually said to a friend of mine, I don't know what it is. I feel like I shouldn't go. Right? So I knew it. I felt it. My intuition was like banging at the door. The logic kicked in and went, I can't come up with a logical reason. It's beautiful. It's sunny out. Perfect weather for driving. I'm well rested. And my friend's going to kill me if I don't go and visit her because I've been saying I was going to do it for the last couple of years. Like, that was my logic. Right? And yes, I beat myself up for years that I
should have listened.
I should have listened. And it taught me the hard way
Yeah.
to listen.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Boy.
It doesn't have to be. And so you could look at it as woo-woo, of that a message came from the heavens that I shouldn't. Or you could just look at it as your interoception, your neuroception, that knew that as much as I felt fine, I really wasn't. That I had this condition that made it so that I shouldn't put myself in that position.
Condition?
Yeah, hypoglycemia.
Oh, okay.
Right. So my body was telling me one
Right,
thing.
right. So it wasn't. It's not that it came from nowhere. That foreboding sense. There was something that it was connected to.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's a really good example of, boy, a price you paid to learn. No wonder you're on a mission.
I am on a mission. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and why it's so important for our audience to understand that logic can sink our ship.
Yeah.
And that we ignore our innate neuroception and interoception.
Body wisdom.
Our body wisdom at
the expense of
But
our whole culture is doing that.
Exactly. That's why we need that paradigm shift.
And see, for me, I think the thing that really, like for you, it was that moment of ignoring that, and for me, it was witnessing the way these young women who had been tortured were being treated. They were being tortured again, in a sense.
Yes.
And it broke my heart. And it was just so wrong. And it's still happening.
It is.
It's still happening. It's a bit better, but not a lot better.
Absolutely.
So, this is the way when we really do listen to that, right? it brings us into these places, I think, of real authenticity and integrity. And yeah, there's that sense of urgency, right, Irene? It's like,
Yes.
especially now with what's happening in the world.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I had someone say, speaking of missions, I had somebody say, you're at the age of retirement. Everyone else is counting down the days to retire. How come you don't? And I just kind of looked at them like they had three horns, nicely. And I said,
How did you do that nicely? I don't know.
Because
with compassion.
It was my body wisdom that was
right.
with three horns. And I gently said, do you know what keeps me up at nights? It's knowing that there are people who are suffering.
And they don't need to, I bet you're going to
And they don't need to, because there are answers.
Yeah.
Right? I'm on a mission, you're on a mission. And the beautiful part, I love this phrase. Little hinges swing big doors. And more than one hinge is needed to swing that big door. Right?
Yeah.
So we're all needed.
Yeah.
And that doesn't take the responsibility away from us to do our part in swinging that door.
I agree.
So that is why I'm on a mission. And you're right, too many people are suffering. And I love that our audience is individuals who feel that calling to help as well. And we are showing them how to be even more effective at it. That to me is my raison d'etre, my big ikigai.
I get that.
Yeah.
I get that.
And let's unpack addiction, because we kind of like went over it with trauma. Let's unpack the paradigm shift around addiction.
So addictions, we would see, first of all, as not just chemical addictions, but all behaviors that help us to shift out of uncomfortable threat states, right? So it could be anything that you engage in that brings a kind of relief. And this is something too with clients, it's so important in patients that people are seeing. If they're coming to you stuck in that trauma feedback loop of either a lot of anxiety or a lot of depression is very dorsal, you want to find out and help and listen to them to find out what are they doing that's helping them, that's bringing some kind of relief, either through numbing and falling asleep or waking up, because some people then become very addicted to high-risk behaviors, right? Why? Because they're crazy. Because in a dorsal state, remember, you can't live there forever, you die. Bodies seek out adrenaline pumping activities that help you to mobilize and get out and move into that new state that's going to bring energy, right, and relief from the numbing. So anything that you do, skydiving, anything that you do, binging and purging, all of those behaviors, behavioral addictions, are ways of shifting states back and forth. And the way that I define addiction is really, really simple. It's something that helps you in the short term, it hurts you in the long term, and you can't stop doing it. You might be able to stop for a while if you're binging, but you always go back to it in a cycle. And I find that when we give people that kind of a simple definition, it's very similar to Gabor Mate's. I didn't steal it from him. We thought about it separately. I love his work. I know Gabor and I love his work. That it just helps people to begin to get a sense of understanding themselves. So this thing that I'm doing, this weird thing that I'm doing of pulling my hair out, How does it help you? So instead of, oh God, look at my face, right? It's like, right? That's how we can feel about it, because it's like it's self-harming, and we don't want people, and it can be weird, and like, why would you ever cut yourself? You're weird, and it makes us feel very uncomfortable. But to really do this work well, we have to be able to go to those uncomfortable places and be curious. Well, tell me more about that. Without the shaming, just tell me more about that. And then what happens after you cut yourself? Well, then I see the blood. And then what happens? So then you begin to understand, what is that person experiencing? And that can happen with anything. It can be shopping. It can be binge eating. So again, it's like, well, I just like shopping. Okay, well, does it help you in the short term? What are you doing before you shop? I'm feeling like I need some relief from something. I just need to go and treat myself. I don't feel good. Okay, and then is it hurting you in the long term? Well, no. I mean, I never spend more than I can pay. I'm okay. Okay, then it's not an addiction. It's not a problem. We're not going to have an argument about it. We're not going into a power struggle. Is it hurting you in the long term? Well, it wasn't 6 months ago when you asked me, but now I owe $10,000 on my visa. Okay, so it's starting to become a problem, right? And can you stop doing it? I don't know. Well, let's see. So then we work with ways that you can help people to reduce harm around those behaviors. But they're all linked to how safe they feel in the body. We link all of the tracking of behaviors and minimizing self-harm with how you're feeling physically in your body. Does the body feel safe enough to let go of some of those behaviors? Because if it doesn't, it's not going to let go of them. No. It's not. It doesn't matter what you say. It's the same thing as if you're working with a woman and she's living in an unsafe relationship. You can do all the therapy you want. Her nervous system's not going to pay any attention to you if she's going home and being threatened by a partner. Exactly. So we got to know these things. Yeah. Tell me more about you. Yeah. Because safety has to be the bedrock, right? And if a body doesn't feel safe, it will not stop addiction. In this addictive cycle, if we don't pay attention to the environment that the client is living in, if they're living in an unsafe environment, those addictions are not going to stop. It doesn't matter what we talk about and come up with these ideas and behavioral ways of manifesting. It's not going to change if the body doesn't feel safe in the nervous system. Those addictive behaviors will continue because you're caught in that trauma feedback loop.
Absolutely, which is why I say we have it all wrong. Like the war on drugs, right? The war on this, the war on that. The reality is, even if somebody manages to quit drinking and abstain from that, guaranteed, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, they're going to find another addiction.
Yes,
right?
And usually people have more than one.
Yes.
Usually people have 3 or 4 because you habituate to one, so you go to another one because bodies are going to keep you alive, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, for too long we've had these separate worlds of trauma and addiction, and they didn't talk to each other. That is starting to change now, and that's a really wonderful thing to see. That trauma therapists and people working in the field of addiction are starting to come together now. I just came back from a wonderful conference in London and another one in Dublin, addiction conferences, and some really beautiful work happening there, and also really bringing in the body and understanding addictions through the nervous system and the need for safety. So things are changed. They are moving and changing in the addiction world more and more in bringing in the awareness. And, like Johan Hari's book, about the incredible sense of trauma and understanding that whole flawed argument about the war on drugs. So yeah, there's a lot of work to do there, but it's starting to happen, which is exciting. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. One of the things that I say is, and I'm not alone in this, and I believe we've had this conversation before, is that if you've drawn a breath, you have been impacted by trauma. And by the same token, if you're alive, you have at least one addiction, if not multiple. And I say that because I also include in trauma as in what are traumas to the body, the nervous system, in other words, chronic or overwhelming stress. And you could say that the world has collectively experienced a trauma with the CBUG era that we have not had a chance to heal from.
Yeah, absolutely.
And guaranteed, we have addictions. And for our listening audience, they may go, oh, but I don't, because I eat right and I sleep, I exercise and I have clean living. Yeah, but are you a perfectionist? Are you a stressed overachiever? Are you, right? In other words, let's talk a little bit more about those who don't recognize that they've had trauma, as well as what are some of those trauma addictions that don't fit into the usual.
Well, social media addiction is a huge one. That's a huge one. I mean, the only one that's in the DSM, that the traditional psychiatric model, is gambling, because they've done research on it. But I mean, porn addiction is a huge epidemic. It's probably the biggest one.
Gaming,
just being on your phone. I mean, you look around you, you go and eat dinner somewhere and everybody's on their phone.
Yeah, they're addicted to their phones. We can't leave them alone.
It's just...
That's not why I have this on my... This is not my phone. This is for my notes.
But for a long time, we haven't spoken about behavioral addictions. But those of us, I mean, it's just so obvious. It's the same neural pathway.
Yes.
Behavioral addictions follow the same neural pathways as chemical addictions. They're different in terms of, obviously, if somebody's been drinking tons of alcohol, you got to be careful about how withdrawal and all. But withdrawal happens with behavioral addictions as well. So, yeah, I mean, that's really so basic. I mean, come on, people.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's one reason. As a medical doctor, I can even say the DSM, really, guys, get your act together on this one.
Oh,
And I could say me too when it comes to the reason why I said perfectionism is that having grown up in an abusive household that I didn't even recognize was abusive until I started doing this work and going, oh yeah, that's addictive. I mean, abusive, or that's trauma. Oh, then that means that it was trauma for me too.
Yeah.
And I could say, oh, I clean live. I'm not addicted to alcohol. I'm probably one of the few people that have never done drugs, any of that. And yet I would say I was addicted to being perfect. I was addicted to controlling. I said I was a nano controller, not of other people. That I needed to nano control myself and my experiences and plan my life out.
So yeah, there would be also this blocking of interoception, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because you'd have to block, because the body is murky, and so in order to try to control everything, you'd have to stay up here and then try to really concentrate on your thinking. And yeah.
It was safe up there.
Yeah.
Right?
Supposedly.
Well, that's what
it
told me.
Yeah.
There's that faulty neuroception.
Yeah.
Right? That you talk about, that it was that it felt safer to stay up here and not get and dissociate from emotions.
Well,
which made me a really great doctor.
Yeah. Yes and no.
right? In terms of that I could separate myself from my emotions when somebody was dying, or, right? In other words, you know, in the medicine we award that ability.
Yeah, but that's the biggest problem.
That is the biggest
Because
problem.
what do you want from your healer when you're dying is a person
Yeah,
who can be with you.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
it was, so I always find it fascinating. It's been a fascinating journey for me to go, is this an addiction? Is this an addiction? Is this an addiction? Right? So that I bring that awareness to it, as well as, you know, part of that mission is teaching our audience, teaching as many people as possible that they have suffered or been impacted, let's phrase it that way, by trauma, even if they don't realize it, even if it's through epigenetic trauma, and, you know, where it's been passed down.
And that's a very unique thing, right? It's like we, you know, we used to have this really silly model of like trauma is about some really bad thing that happened to you. And we're becoming more sophisticated about that and realizing that, you know, anything that brings you, I always just go back through the nervous system. If you can be raised in a really loving family, but if that family doesn't get you, if they don't understand who you are and they don't see you for who you are, especially if you're the only one that is different from the rest of them, that's traumatizing, because we need to feel really seen, especially by our family, and understood, right? And so I would see a lot of kids like that, especially in their first year of university or something, where they had very loving families. I worked with the families, but they didn't get them. And this was so damaging inside. And they didn't understand what they were doing wrong. And the kids didn't understand why they were feeling the way they were feeling, which was terrible, because their brother was fine, their sister was fine, but they were all kind of similar folks, similar value systems, similar, and there would be one kid that was different. And that can be extremely traumatizing. But we don't talk about that as trauma, but it is. It's very traumatizing. If you don't feel you belong, belonging is a root of safety, right? Feeling like you're the black sheep is a recipe for a dysregulated nervous system. So the good news in all of this is that we can do a lot to help people to connect inside and to learn how to regulate that nervous system and to connect in a deeper way with who we are as human beings, and to not be so afraid to show some vulnerability, because that helps people so much, right? And I've noticed now in speaking, you know, I'm traveling a lot and speaking, that a lot of us as speakers are sharing now vulnerability. We're sharing our own story a little bit when we then get into, and this is about this thing and that thing. And that's such a good thing, because then it humanizes things. It helps the whole room to feel safer. Oh, this is somebody I can relate to, right? And I think that's changing things, and it makes me feel hopeful about that part of it.
Absolutely. I feel the very same way.
Yeah.
So, for our audience who are helping professionals themselves, even if they're not trauma therapists,
Yeah.
what message would you like to give them in how they can start to use your work in their own practice, and so that they can help their patients or clients even more?
I think in a very fundamental way, it's about who we are and our presence, who we are and how we make and build a relationship with the people that we're helping. And this is a hopeful thing too, because a lot of people are talking more about that now as well. Not just in therapy, that the relationship is such a huge thing, but in all healing that we're doing, in all ways that we're in the education, in all institutions. If we can say to ourselves, the most important thing right now is that I can be a safe person for Joe over there, or Susie over there, or the kid that's in my class in grade 4 who's struggling with reading, or my neighbor, or the client who's coming to see me, or the patient who's frightened because I have to tell them that they've got a serious illness. Mm-hmm. If I can be a safe person for that person to be in relationship with me, that's a huge gift. And how do I do that? Well, it means I kind of have to know me a little bit, right? That I have to find a way to feel safe inside me. Yeah. And how do I do that? Well, that starts with slowing things down, pausing a little bit, because in order to get to really know that place in you, you have to be quiet, right? You have to be able to be with yourself and find a place inside you that is nourishing, that you can go to, that's a resource that you can hold on to, and then help other people through them sensing that in you. Yeah?
Yeah, it's like a dog smelling fear. Mm-hmm. Right? And one of the things that we talk about in our Elite Performance Mastery is that one of the pillars is self-mastery. And it comes to this. In other words, I personally truly believe this from the bottom of my heart, that we need to lead by example.
Yeah.
Do as I say, not as I do, does not work. It never has. No matter how much our parents tried it.
They did, yeah.
And that means, and we can only lead others to the extent, to the level that we have gotten ourselves. So it's vital that we do this work first. And only then are we ready to help our clients with it.
Well, I would say we have to do our own work, and we have to be able to be open enough that we can also take a step with them. Right? Because if you think we've been doing this for a while, yeah. But with really the young people coming in, when I supervise grad students, and my heart goes out to them, because it's so hard in the beginning, right? When you're like, I don't know, this person's telling me all this stuff, and like, do I use this? Do I bring this? And I keep coming back to the most important thing is that you're able to create a safe connection, an authentic, real connection with this other person. And all that stuff you're learning, the tools and it's all great. I love it. I mean, I love concepts. I write books. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is that you know how to listen to yourself and to this other person. And that will always save the day. Especially when we're young, or we're working with something we've never worked with before, sometimes our clients will help us to go that next step, and we'll do it together.
Yes.
But I mean, we're in that role, but there is this way that we co-regulate with each other, right? So in my nervous system is busy co-regulating with yours, especially as you come through the door. It's like, okay, there's Irene, here's Jan. Okay, now we're going to do this thing. So our nervous systems are checking to see, is it safe? Does this feel okay? All that's happening all the time.
Our brain waves are syncing,
yeah.
Our heart rates
yeah.
are syncing.
Yeah. So that's what we can start in the beginning of really shifting that paradigm from top down in a Western kind of cognitive frame. Nothing wrong with that. Love the left hemisphere. You can't write a book without some of it. However, it's not the be all and the end all, right? It's like the right hemisphere holds the body. And the body works differently. The body doesn't work in linear ways. It works in circles and feedback loops, right?
Absolutely. And you've mentioned a number of times that we need to feel it in a safe space ourselves so that we can hold a safe space. And would you be willing to take our audience through a short, I like to call them shifts, instead of exercises, so that they can experience that a little bit themselves?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah.